Hi, my name's Jude. We're at Brickvention 2023 for the Great Ball Contraption. We're going to start the layout at the start-finish sign. Today we have about 102 modules in the layout. Contributors for a few states in Australia, all here in the Royal Exhibition Centre in Melbourne. Anyway, so our first module is the 2023 Brickvention Workshop module. It's a dozer linkage designed by one of the Nonsense Wars guys. It's slightly reduced part count and it's super simple and perfect for the workshop. From there we go into Rowan's 4 metre tall tower. There's a wheel lift at the bottom that picks the balls up just high enough to feed into the conveyor. This conveyor goes all the way up to the top, which again is 4 metres high. And then once it gets to the top, the little forks on there flip the other way and start to carry the balls back down. This module is incredibly strong and sturdy and is reluctant to fall over, which is convenient for a module of this size. From there we go into another build of the workshop module for this year with some nice colours. Then we have a sweeping module. This is a concept that's been around for a lot of years, but this is a unique version by Rowan. From there we've got a reservoir loosely based on the 2018 Brick Fair workshop module with the simple steps. From there we have a modified Sawyer scissor lift. So this module is very cool to watch. Lots of complicated mechanisms that make the cups move how they do. Modifications in the gearing of the steps and small things like that. From there we have one of the workshop modules from Europe. I can't remember which show exactly. It's a modification of the sawtooth designed by NDL. It's reduced part count. This one has had some interesting problems on day 3, but throughout the show prior it's been working quite well. From there we've got a Archimedes screw, simple one with the ribbed hoses up the back of the up the back of the normal arches. So the whole module is upside down. From there we have a pinwheel design. There's pinwheel by Sam Frierson, but there's 3 of them in this particular module. There's been 0 problems from this one. From there we have the mini golf, 5 holes of mini golf. We have the Fabuland theme, and we have a windmill, and we've got a drawbridge, and plastic space one that's not cooperating. There we go. So lots of cool theming on this. The kids really enjoy looking at this one. I really like the Classic Space one because Classic Space is cool, and there's a few Classic Space figs and sets on there. The last hole is Melbourne themed. Not being from Melbourne, I can't tell you what those buildings are, but they are monuments that we have here. On the corner we have version 2 of the reveal ball pump. This is originally by Pinwheel, modifications by Dunes, instructions by me, available on Rubricable. This has had a few issues with the balls jamming in the ball pump, but they're easy to fix because you can actually see what's going on. Then we have the Queen's Tower, which is a extended Lassie ball pump with some nice theming. Again, eye-catching. The kids really enjoy this one. So this one's been quite reliable. This Lassie ball pump has been working quite well the whole show, 0 issues. From there we have a 6-arm version of Akiyuki's catch and release. So this module is slightly shorter than the original, but much wider with the double set of arms. We've had, I think, 1 issue with the chain. When it was running backwards it snapped the chain, but now we've got it running in the correct direction and there's 0 problems. From there we have the basketball shooter, which is obviously 3 basketball shooters shooting the balls into the basketball hoop. This module is quite large, and we had some maintenance earlier today which drastically increased performance. So it's been working much better today. From there we have 2014 Brickworld Workshop module, the simple Donahue conveyor. From there we have the 2015 Brickworld, Brian Bonahum's little wheel. From there we've got the 2016 unknown designer on that one. That one had some trouble yesterday, it's working good now, which is awesome. 2017, the ramps by Brian Bonahum again. 2018 is the Brickworld ball pump, Brian Alano, very reliable. Would recommend the ball pump to anyone starting out with GBC. Instructions are available. The 2019 one is Sawtooth by John Gross. It's a technique approach to a workshop module. And then we've got the modification of the modification, the perpetual prototype, Tom Atkinson's original design that was modified by Dunes, but then remodified by James with a new gate mechanism that has been very reliable. We have had a gear or two pop off down here, but it seems to be holding up now. Then we have Hugh Millington's pusher-upper, very reliable. A near infinite amount of lift arms is required to build this module, so if you're going to, make sure you have enough before you start, because I made that mistake. From there we have the framed version of Lassie's line wheel. So this module has some slightly flexed parts to make the circular shape. It is always a challenge to get this in a perfect circle, and you can see it kind of wobbles a little bit if it's not. We're currently thinking of other ways to keep this circle shape. From there we have a Torso's carbon lift, which is a mesmerizing to watch mechanism that has been around for a fair few years, using the carbon mechanism in the back, which has been modified and used in many other modules since this is creation, which is a bit of an earlier module, 2015-ish. From there we've got, 2013, from there we've got cup to cup. This is version 2 point something. It is not the one available on Eurobricks, it's available on an alternate website. We still have some issues with the spiral lift jamming, but that's what you get with the spiral lift. From there we have Archimedes screw type 1, I'm pretty sure. This one uses the transparent panels without the side supports to create the screw. It makes an intriguing noise when you hear it, so it's a good one. From there we have the framed version of the Solaire. This one has had a few issues when it lands perfectly on a ball and jams and overheats the motor. But it takes 2 seconds to poke it and it's fixed. The next module is an Akiyuki pinball. This module has been in existence for many, many years. We've had some weird, the balls are sitting at the top, but yeah, hasn't caused too many issues. From there we've got Akiyuki 6 heads. Very reliable, this one. We did a timing modification. We changed the timing from the instructions, which means the heads don't collide anymore. So it runs non-stop the whole show. We did have the beak of the yellow head fall off a couple times, and it lands in the next module. But just putting that back on is all it needs to fix. Next up is Batch 13, which is another Sam Frierson design. This was built for the Discord challenge where you had to release 13 balls in a batch. What it does is it grabs a bunch of balls, waits till the 14th ball, locks the 14th ball under this plate here and releases the 13. A nice SEPA design. This module is really well designed. You can split it in half and so for easy transportation, which I quite like. After that we have Bacillus, which is a Fernando Q design. Mine is slightly modified. In the original drivetrain was a little bit unreliable. This one had some issues earlier on, but it's working okay now. Still drops a few balls, but most models do that anyway. From there we have a Hugh Millington Scissor Lift version 2. This one's been really reliable. I've never had a single issue with it. It works straight out of the box. From there we have my bridge, which was completely destroyed in my suitcase on the way here, but I was able to get it rebuilt using my digital copy of it. But this is unique in that there's a whole module pinned in at the top, so I can undo the pins and put a ramp in and use the bucket pass elsewhere on the table, but I've put it up here because why not? This module is very noisy, you can hear it from the other side of the layout. And then we've got a simple rattling on the way down. Now, from here, as we enter the Akiki Berthel van Beek section, I'm going to hand off to Aaron, who's going to take you through this section.
Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm the builder of most of these Akiki models. I've been doing GBC for about since 2008, and I'm now managing the Akiki project on Eurobricks, so I'll keep it up to date and add new models. So we've got a large section of Akiki models, and we also have a large section of Berthel van Beek machines. So we'll start here the other side of the bridge. We've got the wheel and steps. This is one of Akiki's more simpler models. This one basically just has a simple wheel. And it's supported up into a set of stairs, which don't actually have any sides on them. Just suspended by the 1x2 jumper plates. And then they go down this ramp, which doesn't have any sides on it. It's just these sheath wedges that keep the balls stable. From there, we go into the Type 1 Akiki train. This one is a mechanical version of a training system. It's the first version that Akiki came up with. It's working okay. It does have a couple of issues, but for most of the time it is running quite reliably. Everything is driven by the train. The train has a gear on the side that meshes with the cogs on the station. So from there, we head into the Akiki ball cleaner. This is one of Akiki's most complicated GBCs. He uses mine storms, power functions and pneumatics to achieve a simple thing of just cleaning the balls. There is a lot of moving parts in this thing, and I've had to repair it 2 times so far during the show, but it's mostly running pretty well. It's just making sure there's enough air pressure, external air supply, as there is a lot of cylinders for it, so have to use an external air supply for that. But other than that, it is running fairly well. From there, we move on to cylindrical drive. This is one of the more complicated Akiki models, so you don't count the mine storm stuff. This one is based on a cylindrical gearbox, and the balls just go around the end outside, and they go down the ramp, come out the front there. From there, we move on to the fork to fork. This is one of Akiki's more recognisable ones. He seems to display this one at every event. It's run very well. A lot of adults seem to like watching this one and how they pass the ball from each set of forks. It's run quite reliably the whole show. I haven't had to touch it, so yeah, it's quite an interesting model, that one. So it comes down this little snake slide. We've got a standard connection on each model for my section anyway, because it just makes it easier. And then we go into one of the another attractive one, the strain weight gearing. This one only uses one XL motor to drive this whole harmonic gearbox. This causes the balls, I think the ratio is a 1 to 60 from what I know. You'll have to do the math on that one, but that's just from working out what the number of teeth. So the balls get picked up, they go around the end of this sort of flexi spine part, and they get pushed out the top here and move on to the next model. Come down the snake slide and into the Type 2 cup to cup. So the previous cup to cup you saw was the Type 1, this is the Type 2 version. Instead of going horizontally, you decided to go vertically. The only thing that is a bit of a downside with this one is if the balls do fall off, there is no catch straight for them, they fall straight into the mechanism. I haven't had that issue with this one because it's been running okay, but I do have to reinforce this some back brackets here. But other than that, it's been running well all show. Down another one of those snake slides. These are good for adjusting things on the fly. Like if we need to move something around, we can do that. That's why these are really helpful. This is the RQQ stairs. Corbett did the instructions for this one, and he added the RQQ standard on it. Pretty simple. It's a good one to start with if you're looking for a good model to start with, the RQQ stuff. And there we move on to the lift trigger by stuck ball. This is the rebricker interpretation of this module. It's run pretty much non-stop with no issues. It does run faster than the original RQQ version, and that's because the gearing is different. But it doesn't make much of a difference to the actual design. It still runs exactly as intended. From there, we move on to the RQQ Invisible Lift. This is probably RQQ's most famous machine. That's not Mindstorm's controlled, obviously. And it's a beautiful model to watch. I've had this running at 2 shows now. It has not dropped a single ball, but to get it to work at that sort of precision and accuracy takes a lot of time. You have to carefully adjust all the antennas and make sure they're perfectly aligned. Other than that, it's a very, very rewarding machine to just watch, and people have really enjoyed watching this one, so glad to have it on the table. From there, we're moving to the RQQ train. This is the Type 2 version of the train. So the previous version I explained about how the lack of the gears sometimes didn't mesh with the stations and things like that. This one eliminates that problem where it's a bi-directional, so it can run, it doesn't have to have the switch module to change into the unload station, it can just go straight in. And this one's also running on mains power, which is another benefit. This is the unloading station of the train. As you can see, it has a series of shock absorbers to help counterbalance the weight of that car. So from here, we move on to the Berthel van Beek models. Berthel is a GBC designer from the Netherlands. He comes up with some very interesting designs. This is his double bucket. Probably one of his lesser interesting ones, but it's one that I did instructions for. It's been running quite well. It does drop a few balls here and there, but it is designed to take a lot of balls. Good use of those bucket rings. This one is one of his newer ones, the Remo buckets. So I think it was a couple of years ago, a Japanese guy named Remo came out with this design, and Berthel decided to do his version of it, including the RQQ standard and the splitter at the start there to split it into 2 lanes, which I think is very clever. So from here we have this is the logarithmic ball counter. This one has actually been counting the balls since the Thursday setup. So far we have over we have 12,144 balls have gone through this particular module. Give or take a couple of hundred, because there's probably been some issues, but there you go. But it's been very interesting, and people have really enjoyed watching this one. So it's based on the JK Brickworks design for the tippers and the Fernando Q for the Serpent part. From here we move on to the Tensegrity. This is another very interesting Berthel design. We come up with this Geneva drive system using the bucket wheel rings and the steel balls from the Mindstorm sets. The cups are not Lego, they're actually generic ones from AliExpress, but gotta do what you gotta do. It's the normal ones are very expensive. And the balls just run across the Tensegrity parts, and to get them balanced just enough so the balls go along but not knock them over is quite difficult, but once it's running it's quite nice. From there we move on to the stake and lift. This is one of his more reliable ones. It's been working non-stop all show. I quite like it. I like all of his models, but this is quite an interesting one to watch. They just go up and then they spiral down. That's an Akiyuki concept there from the 5 foot rings. Parallel steppers. This is another new one that he came out with only a couple of months ago. It's got a nice big reservoir which I put on it because you'll see why in the next module. But if I needed to stop it, I can service the next model without having to worry about balls going everywhere. But it's a nice reliable model to do that. From there, we move on to the framed robot dreams. I know this model in particular has given a lot of people a lot of grief. This is my interpretation of it. It's built for the instructions, but the only change I've really done to it is the grabbers, using some lift arms instead of the rubber dampers, and so far it has not stopped running for the whole show. So it's exceeding my expectations. It's a very interesting motion, how they move the balls across, and it's one that I really like watching. This one is called the Rainbow Wave. This was one of his very first models he did, and he got very noticed with this one. There's a lot of gearing on the back here. I know the builder James has had to change the gearing on the back because the original gearing he had some issues with. And the balls actually just ride along the way. There is no ramps or anything on it. From there, we move on to the pneumatic module. This is another Akiyuki one. It's only controlled by the 2 pneumatic cylinders you see on there. There is nothing else running that. The motor is just pumping the air into it. It goes around, spins and dumps the balls. This is Akiyuki's latest one, the 5 tilted rings. It's an improvement of the previous tilted rotors that he made. He does have instructions for this one. This one has been running quite well, but as you can see it is slowly getting a little bit slow. I think some of the parts are starting to wear out a bit, so I might need to look at that. But it's a very interesting module, and yeah, and there's that exit which is the stake and lift is borrowed from. So now I'm going to hand you back over to Jude. So this is me, Aaron, from the worldwide GBC group. And yeah, this is the Akiyuki and Berthel Van Beek section, so I'll hand you back over to Jude.
Alright, so the next module we've got is a pneumatic 10x10-ish module. The idea wasn't for it to be a 10x10 module, it's almost a 10x10, but because Technic it likes to be not even. Anyway, after that we've got a bunch of these cool steppers. We're calling these two one module, this another, this one another, this one another. This one here is quite cool, it's got a bunch of frogs on it, but anyway. And then we have another copy of the 2019 Brick World module, Sawtooth Stepper. From there we've got Joel's rotating platform module. This one uses a simple conveyor to feed up to the rotating platform. It's got a little flap here which times to release the balls, and then a similar thing for the exit. It's quite cool. On the brick. After that we have the slow push arm design. This is a nice Technic one. Most of these you see a lot of standard bricks, so we've got Technic in this one, which is cool. Very simple, very reliable, no issues from this one ever. From there we have some zigzag ramps, another using a simple conveyor, which Joel likes to do apparently, and then a series of these 11x5 panels. Looks cool when there's a bunch of balls in there. The next module is my favorite for the display, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's a good favorite to have. There's some slightly illegal brick techniques on this one to create the arch, but I'm not telling anyone. This has got a cool remote control car sort of setup or train that you can control with an infrared remote, which dumps the balls back at the start and then the train comes back. Currently in progress is the switching for the loader, but I'm sure that by the next show Joel will have it figured and we'll have a cool train switching mechanism. So 2 conveyors going back and forth into Owen's section. This is a batch counting module. The RCX decides, it also counts and also decides how many balls to put in each batch, and it also changes its mind over time, and then it just releases out batches. Simple conveyor using the old style chain. From there we have a variable speed reservoir module. So it's a simple conveyor using a counter to identify and then graph how many balls are passing per second. So you can use it to adjust the flow if you want to run slower or faster or whatever. From there we have a simple step module. This one is on shared power with the next 2 modules. This one's been around for many, many years. It's very simple, very reliable. From there we have a wheel module using conveyor belt track, but inverted, to scoop the balls up and onto the next module. The next module is the excruciatingly slow conveyor, which resyncs everything to 1 ball per second by having a wide ball collection area and a slow moving conveyor. From there we have a simple conveyor with an adjustable output. And then we have Owen's Blue Bridge, which has been around the world more than once, and it's very cool to see it in person for the first time. It's unique because it's got the track going all the way around the outside, so that it pulls the balls up, pushes them across, and then inverts and carries them down. From there we have a tracked loop module, which is just a big log conveyor that passes the balls up and over, and then the conveyor belt goes back underneath. Very unique module, this one. From there, we've got a module that uses no gears. It's got some elastic bands running on some half bushes and some pulley wheels, so that it can reduce the speed of the motor enough to run the little forks slow enough. After this one we've got a prototype for that little yellow conveyor that we saw just before the Blue Bridge, again with the adjustable output. And there we've got a prototype stepper for a larger module that Owen's been working on. This has been working non-stop. It's a very cool mechanism he uses to release 2 balls. So the steps pass 1 ball at a time, and then the final one passes 2. Very cool. From there we're into another shared power setup with a tri-axle sort of river sort of thing. It just blows the balls up. It's been around for a few years. And then we have a new module, this Archimedes screw using the 6x6 quarter gear segments that come out in one of the new Star Wars sets. Got a bunch of these through lug bolts, so he was able to pull this off. Slightly flexing a few parts, but there's no problems with that. This is the power module, the stepper. The XL motor in this actually burnt out earlier today, but we've got a new one in there that's running just fine. This also has a cool switch on it, so you can hit that and it shuts off the power of the whole shared power. Then we have a sweeper using brick separators, and then a conveyor here that uses the old style chain to lift the balls up, batch before, and then release them one at a time. So once again, 3, 4. Then we've got a very well themed castle module. There's a panda here which is quite cool, but there's lots of knights and everything on the front, lots of scenery and decorations. From there we have Polo from Planet GBC's version of Little Drum. This one is much more colourful than the one that there's instructions for. It's got slightly different gearing from the original Lego Marble Run design. It uses a very small amount of parts. It's a good one for beginner builders, so if you're looking for something, this is another contender. From there we have a conveyor belt with adjustable ramps. We have used the adjustable ramps a few times. It's currently super compact because we've got everything sort of dialed at the moment, which I probably shouldn't say too loud, but oh well. From there we have hubless conveyor designed by Dunes. There's instructions for this one. We had some friction issues early on, but now it's working quite well. And then we're into the interactive mine module that Rowan has done. This one is very cool. I was definitely looking forward to seeing this. We use an extended WMO1 conveyor to feed into the TNT exploder, which has got a little hand-operated blaster at the front, and a hand crank that can be used to run the conveyor. Simple hand crank. And then the stepper that we use here is a modification of a brick field stepper.
Lost on Lombard.
Yeah, Lost on Lombard. This has been built in a fair few modules. It looks really cool here. After that one we have an extended version of Sam Frierson's ball pump. This is a nice compact ball pump. It's been quite reliable, zero issues with it. I've been looking to build one of these, I think I might. From there we have another 3 of this year's workshop module for Brickvention. We have these 2 running on shared power. This one's got its own motor. So this is again a simple vertical linkage. From there we have the Hailfire wheel loop module, which uses 2 of these really old wheels that are quite expensive and a Aki standard stepper. Apparently the gear ratio between here and, because this has got 168 too, and the only gears that mesh with it are Samsonite gears, which come in like only a small amount of gear ratios. The stepper and the wheels don't actually line up, so sometimes you get a ball dropping because the timing is out, but it's impossible to fix. Anyway, we go down nice snake flexible ramp into NDL's basketball shooter, which has got springs in the basketball player's legs. You can press the springs, and then when you release them quickly, it throws the ball into the basketball leg. We've got a nice crowd watching as well. From there we have a newly modified carousel module. It's got a interesting mechanism that pauses the conveyor belt loading when it goes over the top of these little grids. So we watch here, as this wheel gets pushed in by the curved slopes, it disengages between the dark bluish grey and the red gear, and which causes the conveyor belt to pause. So watch again. The wheel gets pushed, conveyor belt stops, wheel gets released, conveyor belt goes again. And the balls just ride around and get pushed down the ramp. Then we have Rowan's version of the Catarata stepper. This concept's been around for many years. Catarata is Spanish for waterfall, which is what the builder wanted to do because he was from Spain. Anyway, it's quite cool, this one, using the tri-pieces. And then we have the compact cardan lift from Laurie George, one of the Brick Fair 2019 workshop modules, but in aquatic theme, which is quite cool. We're now start finish line. Anyway, this is the end of the video, I guess. Thank you for coming around with me, the Brickvention 2023 GBC layout. It's been a good weekend so far, 2.5 days down, half a day to go. Everything's kind of working quite well at the moment, which is always good because you're a little bit tired after a few days.